Uh-oh. No. Where'd he go? What? I'm trying to.
We're off to a great start today.
I have never had that one happen. He just he got away from me before I could point to him. What is going on? The recruiting hour.
Like you were casting him out or something, casting a spell.
I know. It's like, what was that? It was like a weird little dance we were doing. Let's see if we can get him back in here, ladies and gentlemen. There he is. What's up, Mr. Ketchum?
You hit live, and I don't even want to explain what happened to my computer at that point. But I logged out, logged back in. We're back, guys. Glad to be with you with the Orange Bloods Recruiting Hour here on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff, Jason, Chad. I'm not all three, but all three of us are here. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel. Chad, is my mouth moving okay? Am I seemingly in sync? Because
yes, in sync enough.
Okay.
In sync enough, which is I think the working title of that band. And they got rid of the enough, and then they were just in sync.
Which is really a shame because they missed something really catchy.
Yeah.
Guys, again, thumbs up, subscribe, notifications, do all that stuff. And by all means, join us in the Specs chat. Give us your questions. Give us your super chats. We will bump them right to the very beginning. Eric gets in with a yo into the Specs chat. But, you know, if you've got more, we'll take more. Jason, let's just start here. Chad and I spoke about 4 hours ago, and we talked about kind of a big picture, what happened over the weekend. Specifically, Decorian Moore was at LSU, and Michael Fasusi was at A&M. I'm just going to shut up and kind of let you free flow for a little bit. For you, this weekend where we saw Texas have a number of a half dozen, 7 guys come in for official visits and everybody else was elsewhere. What's your big takeaway on a Monday?
Productive weekend for Texas, and we'll dig into that here in a little bit. And, you know, my big takeaway, I was kind of joking with somebody about this. Decorian Moore goes to visit LSU. LSU's back in the picture all of a sudden, right? He says, you know, because they were kind of eliminated now. No, they're back under consideration. And, you know, it's like when Jamie French listed Texas as a leader, and then he goes and visits LSU. And, okay, now things are a bit open. And Fasusi talking to A&M, I think people kind of get too hung up on listen, this weekend, Decorian's going to visit Texas, and then Texas is going to be the hot team. And I mean, you can't get too caught up in the moment on some of these things and some of these guys who visit other places. I mean, did anybody not see it coming that Jamie French says, hey, Texas is the leader, and then he visits LSU, and then he says, okay, maybe it's a little bit more even. I mean, who didn't see that coming from a mile away? Those guys want their drama. They want their suspense. They don't want to give things away. So, yeah, you got to have some common sense, read the tea leaves there. I still like Texas's position with both of those guys, but this weekend and next weekend will be big. But for Texas, you know, last weekend, I was more laser focused. Obviously, I'm paying attention to what's going on the peripheral there, but I was more laser focused on the 7 guys Texas had in. And I've been able to talk to most of them. There's still 2 that I'm trying to track down and get on the phone. I wasn't able to catch them at the airport or anywhere else. So, but the guys I've talked to, man, smashing success catch. I mean, as I said, like LSU did and A&M did, Texas knocked it out of the park with the guys it had on campus last week. We'll go through them one by one, but I think there's a good chance you'll see a couple of those dudes from last weekend as part of this recruiting class. And you might even see maybe 1, maybe 2 of the out-of-state guys as part of this recruiting class. I think they did a good enough job with a couple of those out-of-state guys to really put themselves right there in contention.
Remember, if you have a specific recruiting question for the guys, throw it in the chat here. Those super chats will go right to the top of the list. Our man Sal is on the N train in New York City today. Sal, we hope you're having a good trip on the train and glad you are taking us with you. Blake's jumping in from Tennessee today, which obviously has been SEC country for a while, and now they're getting another UT they have to deal with. And our man Football Junkie says, who gets the Lambo deal this season? LOL. That's right. It was you get a Lambo and you get a Lambo. Well, not exactly that.
Can we talk about the Lambo for a minute? I know we might circle back to it, but Ketch and I mentioned earlier today, off air, Chad, you were there too in our little meeting, but I was shocked that went so viral. I mean, this isn't something new. I mean, last year I had a picture of Micah Hudson sitting on the hood of a Lambo. I'm like, Micah, you might not want to do that, dude. But he sat on the hood and he's flashing the hook. I mean, come on, dude. This is like something brand new that they just created. I think maybe it started even 2 recruiting cycles ago. And when Micah did it, it was in the summer. So it was I'm going back a year 2 years ago they've been doing this. So it's not something new. Yeah, they brought a bunch of them out this last weekend. I'm sure they'll do it again this weekend. But I don't know. I don't know where all the opposing fan bases are all full of piss and vinegar about it, and Texas fans think it's awesome, of course. So I thought the whole thing was a bit humorous, and I don't know. Like I misread the situation. I told Catch, like I didn't expect it to go so viral because they've been doing it for a couple of years.
I didn't think a lot of it when I saw it.
I didn't either.
Like, oh, the Lambos are out, and
I saw the live video when it happened, and I didn't. Stupid me. I should have done a screen capture on my phone and tweeted it out, and I just thought, okay, it's just kind of a standard practice at this point. But
see, the only question I would ask y'all is this the first time we've seen a lineup of Lamborghinis right there at the entrance of the facility?
I'm almost positive last year they had them.
Yeah.
I know they had several cars, maybe not quite as many, but they had them lined up last year. There's been at least one other recruiting event or recruiting weekend when they've had several of those cars out there.
I think it's happened several times.
Okay.
I've never had, they've always, when they have them out in front in that kind of area in front of the football, you and I, we've all been down there. So we've seen cars park in that area. We know it's actually, if you wanted to do a good car display, it's not a terrible space to be able to do that.
I've parked my car there, but nobody took a social media video of it when I did.
It may have gotten towed more so than anything else.
It almost did, which it really, to me, that answers the question. Catch, to me, that answers the question. And Jason, it's about SEC eyes then. The only difference would be that different sets of eyes are on this program going into this monumental year. That's the only explanation if y'all are telling me that they've lined up these Lambos before.
That's a good point.
I told you, and I think I might have even said this in our meeting. We had a staff meeting earlier today. It's not like you guys missed a show. I think it's the first time. This was the first time since the lawsuit settled. So everybody's in the mindset of college football is going to change and there may be less walk-ons. And what does all of this stuff mean? And it was Texas with the Lambos, first time in 2 weeks since the lawsuit settled. And I just think everybody was kind of in their feelings. I won't mention any names, but I saw someone affiliated with another network. And this wasn't anything to do with Rivals or 24/7 or On3, but it just happened to be that the other person works in a management position for another network, and they kind of clutched their pearls. And it was like, oh, come on.
I know exactly
come
what you're
on.
about. Yeah.
That has nothing to do with like rivalries. And it was like, oh, come on. Don't clutch your pearls now.
Didn't this certain other network fly a bunch of guys out for an NIL weekend and give them all these flashy bling and stuff?
See, I'm not saying anything, but maybe that happened. I'm glad I'm not the only one that may have noticed. I will get back to the recruit specific stuff here in a second, because I know a lot of people want that, but it does feel like Texas is feeling itself a little bit. They knew going in that the Lambos would get some attention. They knew from a messaging standpoint, what's it going to say? Is that what we want to say? And a school that's usually forever image conscious really didn't care. And I think that, I would just say if you're Sarkisian, he sometimes likes to put one foot in one place and then he'll put a pinky toe in the other place. And I think we saw that with some of the questions that we've had all day today on the show. We had someone ask earlier today, Jason, if Michael Terry was about collecting prospects, or as Sark said, it's more important to like build culture. And it was like, well, no, you don't ever turn away guys like Michael Terry. You don't turn away national top 50 level guys. They had to be horrible people.
And Michael Terry is an awesome person, by the way.
Yes.
So I don't know what they're talking about. Culturally, he would fit in just fine at Texas.
I didn't understand where that came from, other than Sark has somewhat painted a picture for the fan base that, hey, we're not just trying to collect all of the best talents, that we also care about culture. And they do, but to have someone ask whether or not the national top 50 kid was someone who's a bit of a luxury, or whether or not it was just weird. And it's like, it's always about accumulating talent.
Exactly. Culture is important, but nothing trumps talent, dude. I don't care what you say. Talent. Nick Saban, I always say it. Nick Saban isn't Nick Saban without those recruiting classes, dude.
We were joking earlier today, Jason. The only schools in the country that can get away with saying it's not about the talent are the teams that have all the talent. So Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, their coaches can be magnanimous and say, it's really not about collecting the most amount of badasses we can possibly collect. Only schools that have a bunch of badasses can say it's not about the badasses. Everywhere else, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes and making sure they don't end up in wrong hands. Jason, I talked with someone, messaged me out of the blue today. Someone that's done some work with Orange Bloods in the past. Did you get a text message as well? Is Michael Terry related?
No.
Okay. And they were basically like letting me know that Texas was absolutely the leader for Michael Terry. And I snooped around a little bit. I was like, well, what else do you know? I've had a couple of people in the last 24 hours kind of say the same thing. I haven't had anybody tell me Michael Terry's a Longhorn, book it. But I've had a few people reach out to me and go, things look really good for Michael Terry's. And he's not a guy that we've spent a ton of time talking about, primarily because I think we've looked at him through the prism of wide receiver. So to see them with a JT Sanders mock-up starter kit idea for him feels like it changed his recruitment a little bit, because all of a sudden it feels like if he said, I'm going to make a decision in the next 24 hours and you guys all need to enter FutureCast, it feels like Texas would be the school to enter the FutureCast for.
Yeah, it's interesting when he booked his Texas visit. I'd have to go back and look through my text messages. It's a while ago, a month and a half or so ago. Even then, it was kind of like, oh, interesting. I didn't know for sure if he would be visiting, because things went so quiet with him for so long after he visited back in January, I think it was, and got his offer. And then things kind of went quiet. He visited Nebraska. Then he announces he's going to visit Texas. I'm like, okay, let's pay attention to this one a little bit more. Last week I was told by someone, not Michael himself, but just someone who knows that recruitment, like he's a lot more open to playing maybe even on either side of the ball. He's not dead set on being a receiver necessarily. He could play some running back, maybe even tight end. And then I did talk to Michael as he was leaving campus, and you said it, Catch. I mean, he told me, I think they talked to him about a jack of all trades kind of role, but he said they specifically mentioned to him a Jatavian Sanders type of role. Okay, so a pass catching tight end. And I asked him, I said, is that appealing to you? He goes, dude, whatever gets me on the field. And he goes, and gets the ball in my hands, was his quote. And I said, okay, so to be clear, I said, you do want to play offense in? And he said, yes, I do want to play offense. I don't really care where on offense. I'll showcase my versatility. I'll do whatever they ask me to. But it was a really good visit. If I pull up my notes here from Michael Terry, he just said it was great talking to Coach Sark and getting to know the coaches and the players. He said, again, whatever gets him on the field the quickest. He's going to A&M this weekend, Oregon the following weekend. I think Oregon might be Texas's biggest threat based on things I'm hearing. Technically, he said, hey, Texas, his quote was, they're definitely up there, top three for him. I think top three is a pretty safe assumption. Like you said, I'm not sure Texas isn't the top dog coming out of that one. He's really close with his family. And I've been told, hey, he would go away if Oregon was the place and he just fell in love. But you and I've been doing this a long time, Catch. When push comes to shove, proximity starts to matter. Staying close to mom and dad, if you're close to your family, like Michael Terry is, that stuff starts to matter. So I really like Texas probably over Oregon and then maybe A&M in this race right now. But I think Texas pushed all the right buttons and just kind of told him, hey, this is a pretty quick path to playing time for you. We don't have a person like you on our roster that we could plug in and play as a pass catching tight end. I mean, Jordan Washington kind of fits that bill to some degree, but I think they did a good job with their sales pitch to him and showing him what's important to him is being on offense and a path to early playing time. And Texas showed both of those.
Jason, I just wanted to follow that up with a quick tight end conversation with you. I You know, they've got a tight end commitment, although, I don't know that we know exactly what's going to happen in that situation. I've looked previously for, I don't want to say the last couple of months, but it seemed pretty cut and dry that Keody Armstrong and Nick Townsend were two big-time tight end prospects, both of them national top 10 type guys. I've got both of them ranked as super blue chips on my LSR list, so they're both top 10 to 13 players in the state of Texas. And I've always kind of wondered, well, maybe it's one or the other, and the other one ends up at A&M potentially. So it's kind of like I was thinking about offensive linemen with Lamont Rogers and Fasusi and Haywood. I thought they'd all maybe split up. I hadn't really been thinking a lot about Michael Terry in this mix. So when I first thought Michael Terry was coming in, I was thinking to myself, okay, they're bringing him in on the 7th. It doesn't mess with any of the receivers that they have coming in on the 14th and the 21st. And maybe this isn't a fair comparison because one guy is way better as a prospect than the other. But I was thinking about Miles Davis from a year ago and how he comes in early, but then the big dogs came in and maybe they circle back to Miles Davis or maybe they don't, but they kind of slow played him a little bit. And I wonder if they'll do that with Michael Terry at wide receiver. Keep the pan on the oven and keep the fire on, but maybe have it simmering instead of boiling. But now that they pitched to him kind of an H-back type position, it puts him in that tight end discussion. How do we think they handle? I think Michael Terry is a supercharged version of the Winston kid they already have a commitment from. I think
I view those two as totally different players personally.
Do you?
Having stood by both of them, just their physical frames are completely different. Amari Winston.
What they were going to ask those two guys to do are similar things. Winston, I think, is
Winston's more of a traditional tight end, in that he's probably more experienced as a blocker. He's more comfortable with it, but he's not a big dude. Amari Winston isn't.
Which is one of the reasons why I think he and Terry, they're both. What do we have Winston listed at in the database?
You know what? You read my mind. I'm looking 6'2", 239. 6'2", maybe a bit of a stretch.
Okay. Yeah, he's not the tallest cat in the world. So they've got totally different builds, but I've never viewed Winston as an inline blocker. I mean, he's not.
He feels like he is. He feels like he's versatile and can do both. He did visit Auburn. Amari Winston did. And I said it before, he's kind of playing with fire there. If they end up getting Michael Terry and Keody Armstrong wants to come aboard, Texas may be like, hey, Amari, you've been flirting around and maybe it's time to, maybe it's time to go date that.
So how do they balance? Do we think they're going to take two tight ends-ish?
Yeah, yes, ish is a good way to put it. Yeah, maybe not two true traditional tight ends, but yes, they'll take two people that will line up, maybe in line, maybe flexed out as some variation of a tight end. Yeah, so that's the hope. That's the goal. And don't forget, guys, they had Caleb Edwards in this week too, another tight end out of California, more of a traditional tight end. I tell you what, Caleb Edwards, he's a good-looking kid. We've got him 6'6", 225. He's got a prototypical tight end frame that can grow into it. So
the perfect tight end class is what?
You know what? Hey, take the two that were there last weekend.
What is their top two?
I'd be fine if you took Caleb Edwards in Michael Terry and shut it down. That'd be fine with me. I mean, Keody's great. You take him if you can get him. Townsend, I don't have a good read on Townsend. That dude never talks. I can't get him on the record for anything. There's a lot of chatter about Auburn, so I don't know how much he'll figure into the mix. But if you got Winston committed, but if you're asking me if he's one of the top two options, I'd say probably not. Now, can they get two other ones? That remains to be seen. But the two that were in last week are both pretty good players. I think they're both, I think Caleb Edwards is maybe even a bit underrated. He is a 4-star player by Rivals.com. But, I think Caleb's if you watch his film, he's a pretty good, well-rounded player. He can catch, he can block, he's got a great frame, can do a little bit of everything.
I wonder if they'll take – so I think the dream class, now that I'm thinking of Terry as a non-wide receiver, but kind of –
and Terry would probably come in, excuse me to cut you off, probably as an athlete.
Yeah.
I don't know that we would necessarily label him as a tight end. I mean, he may play some flex tight end, of course, but I think you'd probably label him as an athlete if Texas brings him in.
But from accounting purposes, if we have a scholarship board, which
Yeah.
we do,
Yeah,
we
probably
probably
there.
list him at tight end. And I think if you could get, Armstrong and pairing with him, holy cow, it's an amazing 1-2 punch. I wonder if they'd also take, one more if it was the right guy. I'm not even including Winston, who I think is a very nice prospect. I just don't think of him on the same level. So I don't know. I found myself fascinated by how this turns out because Terry comes in this weekend. If Terry committed today and it was him and Winston, how would they manage that with Armstrong coming into town? And I don't know. It's been very boring on the tight end front for the last couple of years. It doesn't feel like
they took Jordan Washington last year. The year before, it had some. Well,
they go with
Yeah,
Spencer Shannon and Will Randall.
It's two guys who haven't, you don't have a lot of depth behind, Gunnar Helm, honestly. And I mean, obviously the transfer portal helped them, but taking 3 this year, I wouldn't expect it, but I don't think it's out of the question because they are, like you said, different styles of players, right? They're not 3 traditional tight ends. Okay. So you could probably spin that and make it work.
If you want to throw in a super chat like Football Junkie did, go ahead. It will get to the top of the list, just like this one does. $4.99 from Football Junkie. What's up, guys? Hey, Catch, how much you think Texas is actually spending /NIL on this 2024 roster? Catch, you can express it in money or cars, either way.
I believe I asked this exact question to somebody with serious knowledge in the NIL world. And he said to me, the teams that are doing the most or the best or whatever word we want to use to frame success, somewhere between 15 and 20 million currently. So that money is split up in a bunch of different directions.
That's on all sports.
No, that's on football.
Oh, wow.
And I got the sense that the belief is that's what Georgia's doing. That's what Ohio State is doing, that there's a group of teams that aren't losing players to the portal because of NIL that are spending between 15 and 20 million. I bet Ole Miss is in there as well. The conversation becomes, how do you spend your 20 million? And I think Texas has treated, there's an unofficial cap of sorts that they haven't been willing to go above because they have so many players that they have to take care of. But all of these schools have money, and there will be some schools that say, look, Texas Tech's a perfect example. I don't think the Micah Hudson situation really came down to this, although we'd always heard Texas Tech was going to be competitive in NIL. If Micah Hudson said, I want 1.5 million to come to your school, Texas Tech could do that, and they don't have a line of players lined up to say, I want what he's making, and to be able to justifiably make that case. For instance, look at Texas Tech's recruiting visit list right now. They don't have a one single national elite player visiting them this year. So Micah Hudson was a really unique situation for them. If they wanted to, they could have, I think, gone twice as much or nearly twice as much as what Texas would want to pay him. And maybe that works out. They don't have the volume of players to take care of the way that Texas does. I think that number is going to grow. I think that number is only going up moving forward. And that was the number that I was given, that there are a handful of programs around the country that are in the 20-ish range, and Texas is one of them.
Football Junkie, thank you for that super chat. Again, if you throw a super chat at us, it'll go right to the top of the list. We have some other chats.
By the way, that's not like news or anything. I reported that on Orange Bloods in a war room a couple of weeks ago. So, I'm just remaining consistent with what I said then. That's as best as I know. That's the answer to that question.
Jason, earlier we discussed a Caleb named Edwards that is a tight end. How about another Caleb? Caleb Chester, the cornerback, was in for this weekend. You talked to him earlier today. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah, I sure did. I was trying to reach him all day yesterday, and I love Caleb Chester, but he was frustrating me because he's the one guy I thought, I thought he might pull the trigger while on campus yesterday. So, but I couldn't get him to answer his phone or anything, but I was able to connect with him today. Actually, he called me today, so that was nice. He called me back, but, and I will have all of this. I'm kind of spoiling my 3-2-1 that I'm going to work on this evening. But in talking to Caleb Chester, the quarterback, just like I'm looking, the highlights he said was the time with the coaches and the players. Manny Muhammad was his host. He said he already knew Manny, so that was really good to get up there and kind of click with him. Loved the offense. Love the offense. Love the city of Austin, the experience. He said just basically everything about it. Now he goes to A&M this weekend. He goes to Arkansas the following weekend. He was supposed to visit LSU, I guess 2 weekends ago. He didn't make that visit. He had a family issue come up, so he didn't make that visit. So, I asked him flat out. I said, hey, where does Texas stand? And I thought I'd get a pretty generic answer. I said, but he said, hey, I would probably say they stand at the top. And I said, so to clarify, I said, so everybody's chasing Texas right now. And he said, yes. So Texas is the team to beat going into these last 2 visits. And Chad, you and I talked about him, I don't remember, 2.5 months ago. And you know what? I'm a dummy. I never put my future cast in. I think that's what we did a show largely on him because I had written that I'm going to put a future cast in. I didn't. I need to. And the reason
I think you did.
Well, I looked at his profile and I didn't think it showed up. Maybe I did catch. I don't know.
I think you're the only person in the Rivals Network with a Caleb Chester future cast. No, I guess I'm wrong. Never mind. It must have been with Cade Phillips.
Well, yeah, okay, Cade. Well, nobody has a Caleb Chester in one. You know what? I'm going to change that as I talk here in a minute. But
he's going to do it live.
That's it. I'm doing it live because, damn it, I said this 2.5 months ago. Boom, my future cast is now in. The reason I thought back then that Texas would be the team to beat over all these other schools that he was still talking to and visiting, and TCU he visited, and I mentioned LSU, Arkansas, A&M. He's got a long list of offers, right? But he wants to study business. And I remember him telling me, I said, have they talked to you about the McCombs School of Business at Texas? He said, a little bit. Well, this weekend, of course, they showed him the whole deal, the red carpet, and really emphasized that. And I told him, I said, hey, Caleb, I said, this is just me talking, okay? I said, I have told people all along that I thought Texas was in a great spot for you because of the McCombs School of Business. I asked him, I said, am I overestimating the importance of the McCombs School of Business? And he said, no, that's a big deal to him. So I do think Texas, he told me Texas is a team to beat. 2 more visits coming up. We'll see if the coaches continue to push. And I think they will. He said they were telling him again this weekend, you are our top cornerback target. Now, maybe they tell a couple guys that, I don't know, but they did tell him that you are our top cornerback target. He said from Sark to Terry Joseph to the GAs to everybody, the support staff, everybody was telling him that. So he is a priority for Texas. I think Texas is going to get him. And as of a minute ago, I've got my future cast in.
All right. So let me ask this as a follow-up. I feel like we know the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So if Dorian Brew, Cade Phillips, and Caleb Chester all want to be in this recruiting class, they take all 3?
Yeah, I do. I think you take all 3. And I think there's some position versatility really on all 3 of those guys. Chester's a cornerback, but he's 6'2". He's got some length. Cade Phillips is a guy some people think might wind up being a safety.
They're all 6'2".
Yeah, they're all big dudes. And Dorian Brew's a pretty filled out guy. So, an interesting Cade Phillips catch. I was going to bring him up later in the show, but he didn't visit Texas last weekend. He'll be in on let me make sure I get my date right. He's on the 21st, but he canceled. He was supposed to visit A&M last weekend. He canceled that visit and just said, you know what, not feeling A&M. So he's going to LSU this weekend, Texas on the 21st. It's now an LSU Texas battle. I just thought that was interesting that, I like, hey, good for him, man. He didn't waste A&M's time. He didn't waste his own time. Just said, you know what, I'm not really feeling A&M. These are my top 2. Those are the 2 I want to visit. So, and Cade Phillips, I saw him at the state track meet. This is random, I know, but he's a well put together dude. I can definitely see him being a safety. He's not the 6'2" long, long, lean, skinny guy. I mean, he's a pretty thick, put together in his chest and his lower half too. So I mean, there's, like I said, there's some position versatility in those dudes, and you want safeties who can cover like cornerbacks nowadays. So I think they would take all three of them. Money B, what's up?
Oh, goodness. Look at Money B. Money B, we shall stop things for $20 in a super chat. Thank you. What have y'all heard about Taylor Searles in her new role? Also, how are things progressing with more BMDs joining the NIL push?
Good questions, Money B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll take the first one. Taylor Searles, she's been involved for a few years now. I mean, I forget what her title was before, her now director of recruiting, but she's always been heavily involved, and I've always heard good things about her. And I mean, I don't know her, but just I see her out there when I'm at recruiting events, and I see her interacting with players, not recruits, I should say, and their families. And she's got, just from afar watching her, she's got a really dynamic personality and just a lot of energy, and just brings smiles to people's faces. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say I've heard a lot of discussion about her, Money B, and the proof will be in the pudding. I mean, how are the recruiting efforts going to be? Have things been well organized? They have so far. Will they continue to be well organized? But just based off of kind of watching her from afar, I think, and I said it when she got the job. I think I don't know if I said it on video or just on our kind of in-house chat thing, Slack or whatever it was back then. I said, I think she's got a chance to be really good in that position, and she's going to grow. She's going to have some growing into the position still, but I think she's done a good job so far, and I think she'll continue to do a good job.
Yeah, I'll echo what Jason said. I think, she got promoted. So when there was some shuffling around of pieces, she ended up getting a bump. So, I think that was a vote of confidence. She's one of the highest ranking women in college football today. I did a story on this on Orange.
She's super young. Like, I don't know how old she is, but I mean, she can't be but mid-20s, maybe, I'm guessing. I don't know. So.
I went through every Power 5 support staff position that there was. So I went through all 5 back when there were 5 conferences. And she was among maybe the top 10 most, from a job title standpoint. There weren't 10 women in college football who were above her. I think she does good work. She's very active on socials and promoting she just, I think in that position, she's in the sweet spot of being able to relate to kids, also being cool enough to do stuff on social. You know what I mean? Like, there gets to be a point where maybe you're not in the sweet spot anymore, but I think she's among the best in the country at what she does among all of the women in college football who are serving similar roles. She does a really good job as it relates to, and I say that as someone, I don't know Taylor. So it's not like, I'm usually in this industry, when you pat somebody on the back and you go too far, that's the person who's giving you information. I always tell people, you can figure out who people's sources are.
She doesn't even follow me on Twitter, man. Come on, Taylor. You need to follow me on Twitter. The director of recruiting, the recruiting guy for the biggest site out there. Like, follow me. So no, I'm not singing her praises either, because I've never talked to her. I've watched her work from afar, but I've never talked to her.
So Taylor, if you're out there, like, we'll help. Hook us up. We'll write some feature stories. I promise. How are things progressing with BMDs joining the NIL push? Not great. I same issues. I think there's a little bit more participation. I think when they had the big Texas One Fund event a couple of weeks ago and they raised like $4 million, I think they feel like they can do more of those types of things moving forward. Although one of the things about that event that's kind of the elephant in the room is that it was still a small group of people that were responsible for the lion's share of the big spending on that night. So they're still looking for affluent Texas alums to get more involved there. The thing that's really happening is that these schools have figured out, what do we do if we don't have BMDs giving money? We can't not pay players. The corporate deals that Texas have been putting together behind the scenes, and they've made a number that I think because I don't know that hell, even I don't fully understand. I'll have people reach out to me and say, hey, this is happening. And I'll kind of shrug my shoulders because I don't exactly understand the full importance of it. But there's a sense that Texas is arming itself in partnerships with very high level agencies. And, we talk about Lamborghini of Austin kind of a thing. There's a sense that they're aligning themselves with people, companies in the NIL space that maybe will start to take over a lion's share of the funding. So you're not asking alums to carry this type of bill every single year. I get the sense that in 12 to 24 months, not that the BMD money donations won't matter, but I get the sense that in 12 to 24 months, schools, especially like Texas, won't be held hostage on the NIL front in terms of what's available, because I think the view is these long-term partnerships that are being built are just a more advantageous way of building your NIL war chest without doing it one donation at a time, $20 a month.
Money B, we speaking of $20, thank you for that $20.
Good questions, though, Money B. Hey.
Absolutely.
Hey, I like Jack says hook him from Key West. We got somebody that was skiing up in Colorado, somebody watching from Key West.
Yeah, I was gonna,
Subway in New York. Like,
I was just about to bring it up, Jason. Sometimes there are humble brags. This is not one of those. Jake, Key West, can't wait to watch my Longhorns play football from paradise. Jake, that is overt bragging. Well done.
Invite us. We will come
early
do
on,
the
somebody
show.
was in A-Base in Colorado skiing. I'm like, man, these OB Live viewers are living it up. Good for you guys.
I literally just told my wife we've got to figure out a place to go. Don't say Galveston. And then I'm here in Key West and you're just rubbing it in my face right now.
Man, Mike's got a little inside info. Says my neighbor and former creative director has nothing but great things to say about her. Referencing,
and most people know this. Her dad is
Stacey
Searles. Used to coach at Texas. I think he's at Georgia now. Is he right? Stacey Searles. Yeah. So back in the day,
I want to say he may have retired.
I don't think so. I don't know. I'd have to look. I don't think
you talk. I'll Google.
Yeah.
There we go.
He was at Texas under Mac Brown. Stacey Searles. You know what? I probably still got him in my phone. I need to hit Stacey up and say, hey, tell your daughter to follow me on Twitter, coach.
Now that's a weird request to make of a coach.
Yeah.
Oh, your
like,
daughter?
Jason, I haven't heard from you in 15 years, and that's what you're hitting me up with. So yeah.
Jason, remember, only the specific instances where that doesn't sound super creepy are you allowed to do that. You got to be real careful with those.
I think just Jason's so old now that he skipped, and I think he did not retire. So I must have been thinking of somebody else. I don't know who. For some reason, he's still on staff at Georgia. He was at North Carolina under Mac.
Yeah.
And then has been at Georgia for the last couple of seasons.
Gotcha. So guys, I think we've hit about three or four of these 7 guys. Jason, let's go. How about DNs? Myron Charles and Javion Hilson, the 2 DNs that came to visit?
Yeah, both out of Florida. Myron has been elusive. Somehow he slipped through the airport security without us seeing him. I don't know how we missed him. So I didn't get to talk to him in person. And I've been calling him and I haven't heard back. So I don't have a lot of intel there. I know coming in, Florida State was a heavy favorite. He's from the state of Florida. That one I think might be tough to get him ultimately out of the state of Florida.
And Jason, before you move on, like sometimes that's a sign that if he leaves that visit and he's really feeling Texas,
you know what? That's a great point.
Sometimes hang out a little bit, make sure they do interviews.
Dude, that's a great point because Javion Hilson, also out of Florida, who is committed to Florida State, he showed up. And dude, he's giving bro hugs and he's thanking us and he's grinning ear to ear. And I took a picture of him. I'm not lying, at the airport, and he flashes the hook 'em signal. And then I looked at it on my phone. I was like, man, there's like a shadow right across his face. I ran him down inside the airport. I said, hey, JV, you mind if I retake your picture? He goes, yeah, double hook him. So I'm like, okay. So this dude was awesome. But Javion, he's committed to Florida State. Listen, I mean, it's going to be tough. He still has his Florida State visit coming up in 2 weeks, okay? But he said, hey, man, it's pretty much Texas and Florida State for me. He had just visited Florida 2 weekends ago. He said, you know what? Now that I've seen Texas, Florida doesn't compare. They're out. He goes, now I'm going to have to go see Florida State. and see how they compare to Texas and then make my decision. This is a guy who's number 19 in the country, ranked nationally. So, I mean, if he holds that position, he will be a 5-star player. Loved everything about Texas. Loved the cities. Like, everything around here is big. He goes, even the airport's big. Did you think this airport's big? Flying into DFW or something? But, yeah, but he really liked, I mean, everything about it. I wrote about him last night. So that's the full updates on Orange Bloods. But he said the culture stood out. Austin was nice. Getting to meet the coaches, the players, they all treated him like family. So, you know, the shine of that visit might wear off a little bit in the coming days, maybe a week or two. But I mean, I tell you what, Texas, Chad, they put themselves in a much better position than I would have guessed before the visit. I thought coming in, I was like, okay, he's just probably coming in to, you know, live it up a little bit and get a free trip to Austin, and he'll like what he sees. But I mean, he'll still wind up going to Florida State. But he came out of that visit, man, and he basically almost said, he didn't say he's uncommitted, but he said, hey, they are dead even right now. I'm going to go take that Florida State visit, and then I'm going to evaluate those 2 schools and those 2 only and pick one of those 2. So.
Interesting to me, Catch, to hear about that quick a dismissal for Florida, a guy that's from that state. Yeah. Like, if you're a Texas fan, that's got to make you feel pretty good. Kid that grows up in Florida, you got to think has a certain amount of respect for what the Gators are and whatever that program is. I understand Gainesville and Austin, maybe that's a different discussion, but in terms of facilities or whatever it is, I would have thought it was at least somewhat competitive, but willing to put them to the side that quickly, that tells me something.
Let me read you the quote, Chad, quote from Javian Hilson. This visit was definitely nice. It's a big city compared to Florida. It's nice. Here it's welcoming. Florida, it kind of wasn't like that. I loved it here. I could easily fit in. So not only was he not feeling Florida, kind of threw him under the bus a little bit. I'm like, okay. Man. So, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. An in-state kid not feeling Florida so much. So.
Well, and Chad, real quick, I remember I mentioned this earlier today on our House Divided show that, you know, sometimes you got to like sift through some recruiting interview BS to find a comment that matters. That, you know, if you're Texas and you're seeing interviews with DeCorian Moore, or you're seeing reporters talk about the visits, it's a whole lot of, well, they made up some ground and I'm thinking more about them, but, you know, it doesn't sound like a significant change has occurred in the recruitment. Then, and look, DeCorian Moore is a perfect example. He leaves LSU, he leaves Ohio State. Different versions of what happened on those visits exist, but everybody tends to think that ground was made up, but not enough to necessarily be even or ahead of Texas. And so on you go. This kid does an interview yesterday, and he very specifically says, hey, it's now like between 2 schools. And even highlighted, hey, so much so that let me compare it to where I was last week. That's what you want. If you're Texas, you know the Florida State thing's going to be tough to overcome. He is still committed there. But, man, he laid it out pretty specific. And he described a situation where a significant event took place. And there weren't many of those situations as we did updates on kids, as Rivals did updates on kids, as other networks did updates on kids. And you're skimming through what people's notes and stuff like that are saying. Other than Michael Fasusi, who was really high on his A&M visit, I didn't get the sense, I mentioned it earlier, that a lot of bad things happened to Texas. And I think with Hilson, if you're a Florida State fan and you took the exact same train of thinking, right? As long as our favorite prospects aren't coming back saying that, holy cow, that was the best thing since sliced bread, you really don't worry. I would imagine if I was a Florida State fan today, I'm looking at Jason's interview with Texas and you go, oh, okay, well, we get the last shot. He is a Florida State commitment, but you know who the competition is. And that kid told you that his visit is in his brain. So I think that we've got a pretty good idea on the status of that recruitment. I think Texas got a really good chance. Can they beat Florida State for a Florida prospect who's already committed to the Seminoles when Florida State's going to get the last word before presumably he makes a final decision, at least for the summer? I mean, I think that remains to be seen. But as soon as Jason did that update, my ears went, bing. Uh-oh. That is significant in my estimation. And consequently, the other guys that they bring in, oh, he ran off before you can. I'm telling you, sometimes you've got to read between the lines on these things. Hilson doing double hook'ems and being available for every reporter covering the team. I think it's a real good sign if you're Texas. There's work to do, but I think you could feel really good. One more note, a former reporter who, to be fair, I absolutely loathe, but he does good work. He apparently spoke to Hilson's. I know, I just drop scuds every once in a while. Apparently, the mom told this reporter that she wants him to go to Texas.
The mom and the sister are right there with him. In long story, but I'm interviewing Hilson and he was talking to the mom, so I didn't hear what she said, but there may be some lip service there. She's talking to people in Austin, but listen, but Texas does a great job with parents too. So I'm not saying to discount it by any means, but I don't know that.
I'm with you. I took it with a huge grain of salt, but it made me think that the mom will be a big deal on the Florida State visit. So just something to keep an eye on.
And he was one time committed to Alabama, a long time ago. So he's already had eyes outside of the state of Florida. So I don't think he's locked into staying close to home necessarily. And you know what? I'm not even sure how close to Tallahassee.
Yeah, they were to swing this, to pull this off. I mean, you'd make a case outside of a Decorian Moore and maybe a Fasusi. You'd be talking about one of the, and he's an edge prospect. I mean, it says a lot of how well Texas has recruited the edge position and getting Colin Simmons a year ago, that the Texas internet world didn't just come to a complete standstill when this kid agreed to visit officially, because up until Colin Simmons, he's exactly the kind of guy that Texas hasn't really been able to pull. It would be a monumental W. I mean, Jason said it. This is a top 20 national kid that if he just holds his place, I mean, he's a 5-star prospect. And those guys, Texas doesn't pull out-of-state edge players who are ranked 5 stars on the regular. It's actually pretty abnormal to be able to do that. So it's probably an even bigger deal than we've talked about. You could almost make the case maybe we should have led today off with Hilson, because if you look at his profile, that's a really big deal to have carved out some one-on-one competition with Florida State. Because if you win that, it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. I said this yesterday. He mentioned Colin Simmons, and kind of similar style play. Boy, you got to have some real confidence if he does commit to Texas, right? To come in 1 year behind Colin Simmons. But hey, he's a tremendous player of his own, and I don't get the impression he lacks for confidence at all. So,
those guys typically don't. They all those guys that are at that level they all assume they're better than anybody else.
They kind of know who they are. Yeah, that is big. I've got a source that says if if Jason had needed a third picture, kid was ready to sing Texas Fight. I think he was ready to go. I think he was ready to just keep building it up and building it up. Hey, Juan, we see your super chat. We will get to it just as soon as we hear from the good folks at Specs.
Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Specs. Cheers to savings.
All right, Catch. Juan could not resist a question about another sport. $4.99. Catch, if you were Texas, who would you hire that is realistic for head baseball coach? Gun to your head.
Couple of things. When we say we're whores and that if you send a super chat, we'll interrupt the show and take the super chat because we love money. One,
throwing in a baseball.
Sometimes seeing is believing. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, this would be us interrupting the recruiting hour to take a baseball question, because who doesn't want $4.99? One, I'm just busting your balls a little bit. Thank you for the super chat. We do appreciate it. I don't know. It comes down to what is realistic. I'm telling you, depending on who you talk to, the realism changes. I spoke to somebody going into the weekend that felt like Schlossnagel. Thank you. Boy, I almost don't want him to come to Texas because I don't want to have to say that name over and over again. There was conversation that maybe he's not in play, but maybe he's not out of play either, that there's still a world out there where That's not impossible. And I don't know, it doesn't feel likely, but I talked to somebody and the person that I talked to, somebody that I feel like would absolutely know. Plus, that person sent me a message in the middle of our conversation that he deleted. I wonder what it was that he said. I may always I should have just messaged you back. Hey,
what was that?
What was that you just deleted? Because it was right after our conversation about Schlossnagel. The guy at Clemson is probably the guy that gets talked about the most. There's buzz that Johnson at LSU could be had, but it would cost the kind of money that Texas baseball hasn't been willing to spend. The Tennessee manager coach was also mentioned. Again, another type of hire that if you make, it feels like you're going to be paying the highest college baseball salary in the country. Jason, sometimes I have a hard time figuring Texas out because there are times when in previous years, maybe pre-Lambo, Chad, but, even as far back as Shaka, it's like, well, we don't want to pay the coach a certain amount this. We don't want him to be close to the football coach. There's been a hesitation on baseball and basketball to feel like they're going to just whip out their wallet and pay whatever it takes to have that guy. Would they be okay with paying $2.5 to $3 million for a baseball coach? Boy, my gut instinct says yes, that is not what they want to do. But there's no getting around that the current leadership at Texas is pretty all in on being great in sports. That from the board of regents to the president to the athletic director to the coaches, and Sark talks about this all the time, there's some real symmetry with the way that everybody works together. In the past 10 years, if you'd asked me this question, I would say, well, it's going to be somebody, they're not going to break the bank. But Sarkisian just got a big raise. So he's out of distance between the basketball coach and the baseball coach. I don't know. I don't know what realistic is, but those are the four names that I've had mentioned to me. And the question that I have is, if they can't get any of the big names, does that mean Pierce comes back by default? I think that's on the table. I think Pierce knows it. I think Pierce is hoping that by default he comes back because the right hire is not there to replace him. So I think there are a multitude of scenarios that exist. And, Clemson's done playing baseball. So if they want to go get that guy, he's there to be had. No College World Series to worry about. Tennessee, A&M. I mean, if they want to swing for the fences and dare to be great, it's complicated and potentially tricky from a timing standpoint. But that's what I'm hearing. Sorry.
Somebody's got to be the school that pays the most for their coach, right? And if you're Texas, your baseball program is probably one of the few in the country, that sells out all the games. Why not be the school that pays the most and get the best baseball coach in the country? I mean, Texas and Ohio State and even A&M from a profitability, standpoint, those schools can afford to do it. So, hey, you're Texas. Why not, man? Don't worry about, okay, we're going to save a few $100,000 here by getting this coach versus this coach. No, go set the bar higher than anybody else. Get the best coach in the country. Bring them in. You can afford to do it. Why not, man? Do it right this time. So,
yeah. Be Texas. Introduce him in a Lamborghini. Let's go.
That's right.
Come on. Let's
You
get it
laugh,
done.
but they'll put that Texas banner behind him, and there may be Lamborghini logos in the background, and there are worse things that you can do. If that's the thing. We're Texas. Just keep associating yourself with brands that people think are big time. I mean, and that will pay for a baseball coach if you keep doing business with the right people. I still have doubts, but when you use the word realistic, Juan, I think realistically, Texas thinks it swings a big, what, and there are areas. Look, what did they do when they hired a swim coach? They go hire Michael Phelps as coach, and it's like who's the biggest? There, Texas is willing. Mike White's a perfect example. Like, let's just go take Oregon's coach, and we'll pay him as well as anybody's paying a softball coach across the country. It's just right at the it's like Texas NIL to a certain extent too, right? They don't want to. They're spending the most, but they don't want to spend the most in a certain kind of way. Will Texas spend the most in a certain kind of way for a head coach in baseball? They didn't when they hired David Pierce. And it needs to be said, while David Pierce has done a good job, you probably get what you pay for. And if you want an elite big-time college baseball coach, you're going to have to probably spend more money than you were paying David Pierce or still are paying David Pierce. So anyway, we got sidetracked there.
Yes, and for the record, Cotton wants him to hire Roger Clemens and good assistants. That would be a bold move, Cotton.
It would be a bold move.
I
think Roger would love that.
Yeah, Roger would. Roger would definitely dig that. So real quick, Jason, I think we have a couple names we still needed to hit on the list from this past weekend. Tanook Hines, the receiver, and Josiah Sharma, the defensive tackle.
Yeah, Tanook Hines, Nunu Hines, he goes by either one. But I talked to him yesterday. He's a man of few words, a young man of few words. So he didn't really tip his hand too much. He is going to Notre Dame this weekend, Baylor the following weekend. He's been to USC. He's been to Arizona State. Really liked the visit. Said he loved hanging out with Chris Jackson. Showed him how they'd use him. They actually compared him. This is a guy that's got I think it's a 10.45 100-meter time on his record already. They compared him to Xavier Worthy. Hey, with your speed, we can do some similar things with you that we did with Xavier Worthy. Said he doesn't have a list of these schools I visited. Here's my pecking order. He just told me, hey, I am very interested in Texas. Clearly, he's been to Austin, I think 3 unofficial visits, and then this for an official visit. Plans to decide in July. That Notre Dame visit this weekend is going to be interesting. Talking to some Notre Dame people, he's been a priority target for them. So we'll see how he feels coming out of Notre Dame. Josiah Sharma is another one. I haven't been able to talk directly to him. I texted with his mom. People I've talked to, it sounds like it's a really good visit. I don't have a clear read on him, but in talking to some West Coast people, they don't get the vibe. He's scheduled to visit Florida coming up, Alabama, obviously just visited Texas. They don't get the vibe that he's locked in to stay out on the West Coast. Okay. I think he's very open to leaving. I think Texas might be a sneaky play there more so than people realize. I've been trying to set up an interview with him or his mom, and I've got sporadic responses yet, but I haven't been able to really dig deep into that visit just yet. But just based on a few things I'm hearing, I think maybe people should be paying a little bit closer attention to Josiah Sharma out of Folsom, California. I think Texas is probably in the mix there, but I'd like to talk to him to get a little bit more detail before I stick my neck out too far.
Gotcha. And speaking of paying attention, make sure you are with us on Wednesday in the recruiting hour, because I'm sure we'll be setting up all these visits coming in these next 2 weekends with the 14th and the 21st. The biggest of big names coming in that Texas is looking at. So we're going to be talking a lot about that as the week progresses. Catch, anything else that we need to hit in this recruiting hour?
Yeah, I'll just ask Jason one more question. Back to kind of where we started the show with. If we forget about the visits from this past weekend, and is there a single recruitment outside of the guys that we've already talked about that anything happened this weekend that, and warrants mentioning before we say goodbye?
Yeah, Texas commitment Brandon Brown did visit Tennessee. I mean, that was in the works for a while, but he went through with that visit. If you're a Texas fan, he'll be in Austin this weekend. He's visited LSU and Tennessee. He still stayed committed to Texas technically, but I think, there was a Tennessee website had a quote from him that basically said, well, I'm down to these 4. So technically he's still committed to Texas, but it's about as soft of a commitment as you can get. But you know what? He's still coming into Austin this weekend. He's still technically committed. He did visit Tennessee last weekend. So it'll be curious to see what he has to say, and his mom coming out of this weekend's visit to UT.
And Jason, just one more from me. Any update? Because I know these two guys got discussed today on the 12 o'clock show, but any updated thoughts from you coming out of this weekend for either DeCorian Moore or Michael Fasusi? Did a lot change for you in terms of what
Not
you think about it?
really. DeCorian, I mean, I know LSU's in it and he went and visited. He's been committed there, but, I still think he'll visit Texas this week. I'm telling you, Oregon's on the 21st. I'm not sleeping on Oregon. I still think Ohio State might be the biggest threat to Texas. He's already visited there. But, it didn't move the needle too much for me despite the Oregon visit. Fasusi, you knew A&M was going to do a job. And listen, Mike Fasusi is my dude. I love that dude. He's awesome to talk to. He's always willing to talk to me. So I got a special place in my heart for Michael Fasusi. But he also always has very positive reviews of every single place and every single person he talks to. So I kind of expected he would give the A&M visit high marks. And I'm not saying they didn't do a good job, but he'll have the same to say about Texas when he visits in a couple weeks. I still think Texas A&M, maybe Oklahoma. We've talked about that. It's kind of, there's some overlay there with some other prospects, but Texas will have its chance to really move the needle with both those guys, starting with DeCorian Moore this weekend, Fasusi on the 21st. So, I'll wait till those visits happen before I go too crazy with either one of those guys.
So Fasusi's one of those reviewers that would tell you all the movies are 5-star movies. Like he just wants to pump up the material. Wow, Gone with the Wind and Dude, Where's My Car? They're both 5 stars, really?
Yeah, both brilliantly written. He's just a fun-loving dude, man. He's got a cool personality. He just loves life. So I'm not surprised that he had a great time on any of his official visits.
There you go. Doesn't want to.
Chad, I got 2 things before we go.
Yes, sir.
With Fasusi, I think it's going to come down to Texas A&M and Texas for Fasusi, which makes this upcoming visit to Oklahoma in between the 2 Texas visits really interesting.
Yeah. Because
I have to believe they know that Texas is the primary competition, but how big, I don't know. There's no other recruitment that we can look at where we say it looks like those 3 schools are lined up exactly like that for such a prominent player. So keep an eye on Oklahoma this weekend, not because I think Michael Fasusi will definitely end up at Oklahoma or that they may sway his recruitment, but I got a feeling if there's one school there that they're got to chip away at, it's Texas.
Yeah.
The school that in theory could gain the most by Oklahoma chipping away at Texas with Fasusi could actually be A&M. That Oklahoma, in going for a big move itself, that maybe they can connect on some of the same messages that A&M, it's the little things sometimes that can sway a recruitment. Keep an eye on that. And then Zion Williams from Lufkin may be quietly one of my new favorite prospects in the state for reasons unrelated to anything other than seems like everywhere he goes, he has a badass time. So he went to LSU last weekend, and a lot of the LSU people were saying, oh, Zion Williams loved it. But Zion went to Arkansas this weekend, and he loved that too. So as it turns out, Zion Williams just loves visits. Loved LSU. And if you think back to the Texas visit, remember listening to the audio of that, Jason?
Mm-hmm.
He loved his Texas visit too. Zion Williams loves visits. So he left LSU, and LSU people were thinking, we've made a big dent here. And then they saw what happened at the Arkansas visit, and some of the steam was taken out of their sails because they realized, oh, crap. This guy's going to tell everybody that the best visit he's ever taken on his life was the one that he most recently took. A&M and Texas are next. So, I just think that recruitment probably still hasn't even begun yet, that he's going to have to go through that A&M and Texas visits, and both of them will probably blow him away. And then he's going to announce a decision on July 4th, much to Jason and I's chagrin.
I said, you better do it in the morning.
Oh, I know.
Before grill time, please.
Yeah.
Please, Zion. Before grill time.
Chad, back in the summer, I can't remember when it was. I had just got a boat, and it was the 4th of July, and Jimmy Sutton who is a wide receiver out of Florida, who ultimately signed with NC State, announces on the 4th of July that he's committing to Texas. I was on Lake Travis on a boat, girls in bikinis, jello shots, the whole 9 yards. You know what I did? Took that boat back to the dock.
Damn, you turned the boat around?
Turned the boat. We were just anchored. Took that boat back to the marina, and I told them, you guys just need to sit here for like an hour.
Wow. And they did and waited on you?
Of course they did. I came home. I wrote the Jimmy Sutton story, right back out on the lake.
Man, that's dedication right there.
But my friends found out how serious work was that day because they were cooking on that boat waiting for it to go back out for an hour. Although maybe a bunch of beer helped them get there. Or it's not time to do a vodka spot, but like Deep Eddy, shout out, July 4th coming up.
There it
if
is.
you're working with somebody in the recruiting industry and you're on their boat, stock up on Deep Eddy vodka because the boat might just get turned around.
There
Go
it
to
is.
Specs and stop
We'll
us.
just throw that up. There you go. There it is. Little Deep Eddy vodka tasting room. That's good. That's a mobile tasting room right there. Well done.
You
Well
got that
done.
one for free, Deep Eddy.
Beautiful, beautiful. Also, let's remind you about orangebloods.com. All the great stuff, all the great coverage. Jason was previewing that 3-2-1 article for this week earlier. War Room on Thursday nights, all the great content. We are 3 weeks away on this Monday as we record. 3 weeks from Texas officially being in the SEC. You don't want to get left behind. Get on board with orangebloods.com. All right, Mr. Ketchum.
I'm good.
Good?
I'm good.
Fair enough. Well, thanks for liking and subscribing and getting all your notifications. Remember, the next recruiting hour will be Wednesday at 4. And like I said earlier, you're going to want to be around for that one because we'll have Jason get it all set up for you and Ketch get it all set up for you. If they're both on, might be just me and Jason. It might be just Ketch. Who knows? But getting you set up for this big weekend of visits. And then the 21st is even maybe even bigger than that, depending on how you look at it. So thank you for supporting us. Thank you for helping out. And thanks to over 740 folks in there as we get ready to close the door. Next recruiting hour, 4 o'clock on Wednesday. Y'all take care. Have the good rest of your Monday. This is Orange Blood.